Hey, welcome to Killin It, an entrepreneurial journey. Today, we're talking to Jacklyn, owner of Luna Lynn Creative. How long has Luna Lynn Creative been in business?
I've been in business for a little bit over a year. I started last January, on January 8th, and that was officially the day that I went to get my business license. So I kind of base it off of that and say that's when I started.
What made you start this journey?
So a few years ago in 2017, I was still currently at my old job. I was in marketing and design at the time, and it wasn't the best work environment. And I had already gone through many different work environments in the past. And it's kind of always been like that in the graphic design world. And I was never really satisfied with the design work that I was doing. So I just decided to finally go for it. I've always kind of wanted to do my own thing, and I've always just been too nervous to figure out how to start it. And one day I was just like, you know what? I just have to take this chance. My boyfriend actually kind of gave me the push that I needed. And, it was good to have him there because he was a great support system. So I knew if anything happened, I would be okay. And I just decided to kind of go for it. And I slowly figured out, kind of what I wanted to do with it. But all I really knew when I started is that I just wanted to give it a try.
So you just dove right in, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So what makes Luna Lynn Creative stationery and invitations unique compared to other companies?
I feel like there's a few different factors. The first one being that everything is handmade in-house by myself. When I first started out, I was looking into different printing vendors and figuring out who I would want to go with, which is always very hard because you never really know what the quality is going to be like unless you test it out with an order. And I didn't really like the idea of that. And I also didn't like the idea of not being able to see everything in front of me because I'm very detail oriented. I'm a perfectionist. I'm very particular. I like to kind of be my own quality control. So I decided to start everything in-house. I got a really awesome printer. And so I do digital printing in-house. And then I add custom embellishments, which are belly bands and different cardstock backings. Sometimes I add in the poetry as a belly band or maybe a little element on the different cards that I use. And I also like to write poetry for my clients if they're up for that. Not everyone likes poetry, but I try to incorporate it in some way as my way of kind of making it personal and heartfelt and unique to that client. And it kind of highlights their story and just makes it special for them and for their family and friends. And then also when they don't want poetry, I still try to really focus on the design elements to make it very custom to them, which is my main goal, is making every single order custom and unique.
What is your writing process? How do you get that vibe from them?
I first ask them to kind of tell me their story. You can start with the way that you met. You can tell me a little bit about you as a couple. I kind of just base some things off of who they are as a couple and why they found each other, if they have a really great story, things like that. And sometimes I also ask them, what do you love about your partner? Things like that will help me kind of gather a little bit of inspiration. And then based on that, I kind of take their ideas and a few words from that, and I create some word lists, and then from there, I, use that as inspiration to really get going with the poem. And I just kind of dive into their relationship. I kind of put myself in their shoes in a way.
So you got it down to a science. It sounds like you're good to go.
Yeah, I've been doing it for a little while. I started doing custom poetry, I would say a little over a year ago. And it was really because I was doing some spoken word for a while, and it was always with another group, so it would be based on a theme. So I started learning how to write based on information that I'm given and not just writing from my own heart and my own feelings. So once I realized that I could do that, I really wanted to use it towards my company and my brand, kind of be someone else's voice, just as a way of making their own relationship stand out in someone else's words. And then usually when I do write for my clients, they always have really positive feedback and they say, wow, this is just exactly what I was thinking. I can't believe you did that.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, that must make you feel great too. I mean, what's better than that?
Exactly. It's a great feeling.
How did you come up with the name for Luna Lynn Creative?
I decided to name my company Luna Lynn Creative for a few different reasons. Growing up and figuring out what I would want my name to be someday, we always think about this as designers, and I didn't want it to just be based on my name. And I never really know what else it could be. And then when I was thinking about using my poetry as a main branding element of my company, I thought it would be perfect to use my pen name, which I have created years ago. So my pen name is Luna Lynn, and I thought it would be the perfect name. So Luna Lynn Creative is where that derived from.
On top of the poetry that you write for your business, do you have any other avenues, or do you just specifically use it to facilitate your business?
I do now mainly just use it for my business. I used to write a lot more in my free time just for myself. A lot of times I do still write for my family and friends or my boyfriend, and I use that as presents for holidays and birthdays and such. A lot of times my dad always asks me to write a poem for my mother, and I create a little greeting card for him for basically every holiday.
Oh, that's cool. Aw.
Yeah. So yeah, I do it here and there just for myself and my family and friends. But I really wanted to kind of use my business as an avenue for writing, because as soon as I started my business, I noticed I didn't have as much time for writing anymore. I wasn't writing as freely. I used to write on the train just because, and I was finding that I really didn't do that as much anymore. It was also a way of kind of forcing myself to continue writing no matter what.
Yeah, with businesses, it is. It's very difficult to have any kind of hobbies outside.
Oh, it's almost impossible, I feel like.
What is your company's mission?
So my mission is really to reintroduce the meaning of physical invitations and stationery in the digital world. I'm very passionate about invitations and paper. When I started the business, I really noticed how much I really just loved the physical aspect of touching the paper and just seeing how special someone's invitation could be. It's just like a piece of their heart in a way. And especially if you think about personal stationery, I still know plenty of people who love writing letters or sending little notes to their friends. And I feel like it can be very powerful and meaningful. I know in this digital world, I have a lot of time keeping up with text messages and phone calls and emails. It's hard to find that time sometimes to catch up with friends, family. So sometimes I really like to actually send notes and cards in the mail, and usually I have a really great and positive response from that. And, they're just so happy that I'm thinking about them. And usually they return the favor, a month or so down the road. So
yeah, exactly.
In general, I really want to kind of reintroduce the meaning of paper products, I guess, just physical invitations and stationery and the meaning behind that, because I feel like in the digital world, it can just, fall through the cracks. And I think it's very important to kind of keep in touch with each other that way. And as far as wedding invitations go, I think it's such a tradition to have that physical invitation. And I would hate to see that go someday. It would be a shame.
Absolutely. And also, I mean, as a writer myself, I love to write on actual paper. I actually am surrounded by notes right now that are handwritten.
Right, exactly. I do the same thing. And I find there are times when I write notes in my phone if I'm on the go and I'm thinking of something. And honestly, I hardly ever look back on those notes because it's lost in your phone full of different apps and emails and text. And half the time I forget that I even wrote those notes. So if I have physical notes in front of me, I tend to, remember things more. It's traditional. It's what we're used to.
Exactly. Plus, if you write something down, don't they say that you remember it better anyway?
Yes, definitely.
What has been the most rewarding part of your journey so far?
I would say the most rewarding part is definitely the fact that I'm doing everything on my own. Any income that I do receive is because of myself. It's because of all of my hard work that I've put into something. It's no longer me going to work and sitting at a desk and pretending to work half the time and goofing off and wishing my day was over.
Yeah.
Now I find myself working hard every single day, and I'm constantly searching for new clients. I'm producing pieces that I truly love and obsess over, and when I deliver a final product, I feel so much joy and accomplishment. I feel pride in what I'm doing and delivering. It just feels good to do it all on my own. Like, these are my ideas. This is my vision, my execution of that vision, and it's no one else's. And I really love that feeling.
Oh, definitely, because you're building something.
Exactly.
So what has been the most challenging aspect?
I would say the most challenging thing is the fact that it's a constant hustle. I am in the freelance design world, and I'm also in the entrepreneurship world. And so I'm constantly trying to build a name for myself. I'm constantly searching for clients. They don't always tend to just flock to you right away. I know that it takes years of hard work and dedication to really build your brand name before that happens. So every day is a hustle. Even when I'm working on current jobs, if I stumble upon another engagement on Facebook, I write it down and make a note, hey, I have to get a hold of them in a week or so. Or if I notice a company needs a designer for a freelance job or a logo or anything like that, I always inquire, because living in New York City, you always need that extra money. So it can be very exhausting and definitely occasionally frustrating, but it is all worth it in the end to be able to work for myself.
How do you deal with these challenges, and how do you overcome them? It sounds like constant worry, honestly. So how do you overcome that?
It definitely is a constant worry. And there's times when I notice that, I'm letting it get to me. I might take my frustrations out on others, and eventually I might get down on myself if, I have been searching for clients for a whole week and things aren't really looking well right now. It happens. I know as a designer, there are tons of designers out there. I know personally that if I don't get a job, it doesn't really have anything to do with me. It's usually because someone else jumped on that opportunity to email someone first. And that's just how it goes, because we're just in a very large world full of too many designers and opportunities. I always know that. And it also happens to me with wedding invitations as well. I mean, there's tons of wedding invitation vendors. And aside from all of the small businesses that I compete with, I also am always competing with larger businesses such as Papersource or Minted or Vistaprint, things like that, where it's a large website full of templates that have already been created, and they can just go online and just select whatever design they want and put in their information, and that's all they have to do, and then it gets shipped to them. There's no personal touch behind it.
Exactly.
And that's easy for a lot of brides, and that's the way that they choose. So I'm kind of in competition with that as well. So, it's very easy to get down on yourself, but I always try to keep a positive attitude every day. Even if I do get down on myself for a few hours or so, or maybe even the whole day, I always make sure I reflect on it at the end of the day. I kind of talk it through with fellow designers or family member or friends. And I know that tomorrow is another day, and I just kind of wake up the next day with the excitement of the fact that it is a new day, and it's my own, and it's what I can make of it. So I wake up and I tell myself I can do better, and I just do the same thing all over again, because I know if I don't, I can just spiral into feeling bad for myself, and then that does no one any good. So
Exactly.
you have to stay positive.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right.
And also in the end, if I am continuing to kind of bust my butt and search for clients, usually everyone ends up flooding in at once. And that can be overwhelming too, but it's a good overwhelming feeling. And that's usually because of my constant hustle. I never underestimate the power of positivity, because if I just stay positive and stay focused and keep at it, something always ends up happening in the end because I'm making it happen essentially.
Exactly. You mentioned that you had to teach yourself a lot of the business end for Luna Lynn Creative. How did you go about doing that?
When I first started, I kind of jumped right into it. I said I'll just figure it out along the way, because I've always been terrified of starting my own business and trying to figure this thing out. And that was always stopping me before. So I just kind of threw myself into it and told myself, I'm just going to figure it out as I go. And when I first started, I kind of asked for a lot of advice from a few family members who are entrepreneurs, from, a friend that was an accountant, things like that, because I needed some tips about pricing and taxes and, the general business end that I had no idea about. I received some good tips, and it was still very hard for me to grasp at first, but I took a bunch of notes and just kind of let their information sink in. And I took it slowly at first, trying to figure out how to properly set up my business with the licenses, because it's very complicated based on where you are, what state, what county, things like that. And once I figured that out, then I took the next step and I tried to tackle a little bit of pricing and tried to understand a little bit of how taxing works and things like that. So I kind of took it step by step. And I did a lot of Googling, of course, in the beginning. And sometimes I still have to do a lot of research as well, because it's a never-ending learning experience. There's so much information out there that half the time, something could change tax-wise that's very important, and I would have no idea about it. So I constantly kind of have to be aware of that and pay attention to any of those little details. From there, as far as learning how to price items and really start my business, it kind of took my whole first year of developing different ways to understand what works and what doesn't. I had to figure out which types of paper and products worked best, which didn't. There was wasting money involved. It always happens in the beginning. And I had to figure out, the timing of how long things took, since I make everything handmade by myself. I had to kind of figure out the timing and what I could charge for my time and how I could fit it into different packages and such. And so I would time myself and record it into a spreadsheet every time I had a new project that I hadn't done before. I was very organized. I kept detailed files of each job. I kept records of invoices, and I kept all of my receipts. I kind of took notes on all of the things that happened during every job so that I could analyze them and understand what I had done and what had happened because I chose a certain paper or a process, and if it did or didn't work, and what I could do differently the next time. And so I kind of, towards the end of the year, analyzed all these different notes and information to start developing different processes for this year. So, just different ways to price, different documents that I could use to help myself, questionnaires, different quoting techniques. And I kind of just have been developing things based on all of the things I analyzed from my first year, essentially.
Are there any specific resources that you found helpful?
I have mainly used my own records as a resource, and from my resources, I've created my job checklist, my quote checklist, client questionnaires, things like that. But for me, aside from my own resources that I've developed, it's really been people that have been my main resource. Another solid resource for me was my QuickBooks Pro advisor. She set me up and trained me in QuickBooks, and she answered any questions that I had about reconciling monthly expenses, sales tax, anything like that. And additionally, she referred me to tax professionals. She's even referred me to people who need design work because she believes in what I'm doing. And That's been really great. So I think the most powerful resource is always going to be the people that you network with. I feel that there's always someone that can answer your question. There's plenty of entrepreneurs out there that are maybe a little step further than you are. And, they've gone through what you've gone through. And usually everyone is willing to help each other. There's people always out there that will support your business. And I'm also a part of several Facebook groups for freelancers and entrepreneurs, and I check them every day. I think it's important to use other entrepreneurs as resources. Also, in return, provide my own advice and resources to them as well, because we all need each other, and I feel like it's very important. We all have different information from different experiences, and I feel like it's very important to share those resources with each other.
Oh, definitely. Could you take me through the process of a client coming to you and asking for a wedding invitation, just so people know exactly how customizable and how unique your product is?
Oh, sure. So I do it in a few different ways. It's usually depending on the person or on their location. My first step is always trying to ask them, what they are looking for in their design. And this is also kind of when I ask them about their relationship and their wedding and different things that they're looking for that will really make their day special. So I developed my client questionnaire, and it's fairly new, so it's still a work in progress, and I am kind of testing it out as I go. It's been a success so far with my clients, and I just have some minor tweaks here and there.
Excellent. Yeah.
So I use that for people who just want to kind of go through a list of questions and get it done. I also offer to set up phone calls if that works for people, if they'd rather just kind of chat it out and look at the information, because I know it can get overwhelming looking at all of these questions. So I also offer that in case it's too much to fill out a form. And also once in a while, if they are in New York City here, I offer to meet up with them. If we've already talked about what they're looking for, I offer to bring them samples based on what their needs are. If they want to see the paper in person, things like that. And aside from that, I also, of course, offer to send samples through mail as well. It's kind of my way of showing, here's what I can offer you. I just want to really try to impress people and show people how much I love this and how much they can really love it too, essentially. Once we kind of gather information from one of those three processes, then I move on to the design process based on the information I've gathered for them. When I'm designing, I always think about what they've talked about with their relationship story, and I think about their venue, the time of year, the colors, things like that, that will all kind of become incorporated into the design elements. From there, I develop a custom design based on all of those things that I gather. I also try to usually take it one step further if they would like that. And I think of different ways to embellish the invitation suite, such as with the belly bands or the pocket folders or different cardstock backings, monograms, things like that. And then, of course, while I'm designing, if they opted in for a custom poem, this is when I do it as well. I do it on the very first mock-up round so that they can kind of visualize where it would be. From that point, I do 3 rounds of revisions if needed. And I just really take the time to revise things and make it perfect based on their needs, essentially. I try to give everyone a good amount of revision so that they can really come to a point where they absolutely love their invitation.
What advice would you want to give to fellow entrepreneurs?
I would say never give up if you believe in what you are doing. Now that I've started my business, I know that I can really never look back. I'll never be satisfied working for someone else again. It's just too rewarding to do it all on my own and to do something that I love and believe in. And I'm sure most entrepreneurs can relate to this. Even if they are feeling down and defeated during the times when you can't really find clients or nothing seems to be working out at the moment, sometimes you just can't gather that motivation to keep going. But I say just don't give up. You're brave enough to start it, and that's more than most people can say. I think people should reward themselves for having accomplished that so far and really take pride in it and really use that as leverage to stay positive and keep hustling to achieve your dreams.
Absolutely. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
I really hope that other entrepreneurs and freelancers out there continue to show their support for each other. I know it's been a really big help in the beginning of my business. I've received a lot of help and support from other entrepreneurs and freelancers and just anyone in the professional world that has believed in my business. And I think it's really important to continue to support each other no matter what. And if you receive support, always give support back in return. And I really think that is truly what makes the business world go round.
Thank you very much, Jacklyn. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Jacklyn. It was great speaking with you. That was the owner of Luna Lynn Creative. And this is Killin It, an entrepreneurial journey where business people get to share their experiences. If you'd like to be featured on the show, send me a message at serialwriterct@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and if you want to hear more, please like, share, and subscribe.